How you guys doing today? It's Anthony Ganji. Welcome to another episode of Tear Talk. Guys, I want to expand the dialogue in the Rebecca Park case. If you're not too familiar, Rebecca Park, younger girl, on my right, maybe your left, pregnant, and her own biological mother, someone that she was looking to reconnect with after being adopted by Stephanie Park, basically with her husband, Bradley Bartholomew, stabbed her, held her down, while they cut the fetus out of her stomach. There's no sugarcoating this. Right now, they are both looking at life without the possibility of parole. I mean, you got premeditation and torture, murder in the front. I mean, they are facing strong counts that hopefully keep them away for life. If this doesn't go federal, I think it's going to remain state, because this did happen at a federal park, but it may not have started at the federal park. And I did a video on why this may go state. If you guys want to check out my videos on these, please check out my channel, because if you're not familiar with this case, we really broke it down and we've been expanding on the timeline since. So the other question I want to answer now is, how do we know that the baby has been deceased? Because the prosecutor has made some definitive statements during the arraignment. Johanna Carey said that pretty much the baby is dead, but law enforcement, when they originally recovered Rebecca's body, they weren't as definitive, but I think it was there in their verbiage. Remember, legal verbiage matters. Search, recovery, conditions, whereabouts, all that matters. The level of urgency matters. So there's a lot I want to cover here and try to see if we could figure out why they're so definitive. Now, remember, I'm not an expert here. I'm just putting the dialogue together. Eventually, as my channel grows, I'll be able to get those experts. But in the meantime, I would like to go ahead and kind of give you some notes just to start the discussion. I mean, that's what I would like to do, is start the discussion. So let's begin. All right. So let's get to these notes. There's a lot here to cover, so hopefully this answers some of the questions. But also, maybe more importantly, to start the discussion. I think that would be more important, because that kind of builds the engagement, and again, the stuff that we learn when we expand the timeline, it truly does matter, because these could also be utilized in other cases. So I want to talk about the most emotional and confusing question people keep asking in the Rebecca Park case. How can investigators say the baby is dead when the baby hasn't been found? It's a fair question, and the answer lies in the language official used and how that language changed over time, because in this case, words matter. So the sheriff's words: careful, measured, and strategic. On November 25th, the day Rebecca's body was found, Sheriff Trent Taylor made a public statement. We are working to determine the condition and potential whereabouts of the baby. Now, I want you to listen closely to those words. He didn't say we're searching for a missing baby. He didn't say we're trying to rescue an infant. And he didn't say we need to locate the child quickly for safety. He didn't use any language associated with a living child. Instead, he said condition, a term law enforcement uses when they cannot legally declare death without an autopsy, but the circumstances strongly point that direction. And again, this is their area of expertise. They know exactly what verbiage to be utilized, especially when they go into the press. All this stuff is usually filtered. So there's layers of protection before they go ahead and release these statements. So he said also potential whereabouts, language used when searching for remains, not a living infant. Sheriff Taylor was signaling exactly what trained investigators understood. This wasn't a rescue mission. It was a recovery mission. But he couldn't say that publicly yet. Not legally, not ethically, not until the medical examiner completed the autopsy. So he chose his words carefully. So guys, the reason why we want to say whereabouts is typically used when searching for remains and not a living person is when law enforcement believes someone might be alive, they use language like missing child, rescue efforts, locate immediately, safely recover. But when they quietly suspect the person is already deceased, they switch to much more neutral, careful terminology, because legally they cannot declare death without confirmation. So that's why whereabouts becomes a key word. Whereabouts is typically used when searching for remains, not a living person. It's the same terminology used in recovery missions for presumed dead hikers, searches for drowning victims, and homicide cases where the body has not been found. Pair that with condition, and it becomes even clearer. In law enforcement's language, condition and potential whereabouts equals we suspect this person is deceased, but must remain legally neutral until the autopsy confirms it. So the word itself doesn't mean death, but in context, it strongly signals that investigators were not treating this like a live infant rescue. So I thought verbiage matters, so always listen to what people say. I learned that by doing this. Now, the prosecutor's words were a little bit different. They were a little bit more final. Joanna Carey. So 7 days later, December 2nd, hold on. So November 25th is when she was discovered, and then the arraignment, after a delay, happened on December 2nd, and the prosecutor held nothing back on these Bartholomews. She held nothing back, and she was very adamant in her statement. She was declarative. So 7 days later, December 2nd, everything changed. Prosecutor Johanna Carey stood in a packed courtroom and said this: they cut her baby out. They cut her baby out of her, causing her death and the death of the baby. That's not something a prosecutor says casually. That's not speculation. It's not a guess. That is a formal legal declaration made only after the autopsy, the medical review, the forensic consultation, the investigative evidence, and the charge evaluation. Her words were very different from the sheriff because now they had certainty. Now, why the autopsy made the difference? Now, we must be very careful here. The autopsy details are sealed. We don't know the specifics, but we do know what autopsies reveal in cases like this. In a full-term pregnancy, the uterus tells the entire story. Medical examiners can determine whether the uterus was cut or torn, whether the placenta was ripped away violently, whether there were penetrating wounds, whether those wounds could have struck the fetus, and how much internal bleeding occurred. None of this requires the fetus to be present. Doctors can determine fetal death with absolute medical certainty simply from the mother's injuries. And based on the charges filed, they did. So for the charges, both defendants were charged. Let's get a picture of them. There's Bradley and Courtney Bartholomew. Both defendants were charged with assault on a pregnant individual causing miscarriage or stillbirth, conspiracy to commit the same. Remember, miscarriage or stillbirth. You cannot file those charges unless the fetus is confirmed dead. And they were not charged with kidnapping, child endangerment, or unlawful imprisonment because in the eyes of investigators, there was no living baby to kidnap. The medical reality, why survival was impossible. Let's set the legal language aside and talk medical reality in plain human terms. Prosecutors allege that Rebecca was stabbed, she was forced to the ground, and they attempted to cut the baby out while she was still alive. So, I mean, if they're doing this and she's fighting, I don't know how accurate they are with their ability to stab her. I'm assuming Rebecca fought. So a newborn cannot survive that, not in the woods, not without trained surgeons, and not without medical equipment, not without oxygen, not without warmth, not without neonatal care. Even in a hospital, an emergency C-section has risk. In the forest, in a violent assault, while the mother's still alive, there's no medical pathway to survival, none. Investigators knew but could not say it yet, so let's connect the dots. Sheriff on November 25th, conditions and potential whereabouts. Those are the verbiage. Meaning we suspect the baby is deceased, but legally cannot say that yet. Prosecutor on December 2nd, the death of the baby. They said that, meaning the autopsy confirmed what investigators already believed, and the shift in language marks the shift in reality. So the heartbreaking reality now, some people still hold out hope. Maybe the baby survived. Maybe someone took the baby. Maybe the baby's hidden. Hope is human, completely human. But the forensic, medical, and legal evidence all lead to one heartbreaking truth. Rebecca's baby died the night she did. And by the way, even if the family... not the family, sorry guys. Let me say the better word. Even if these two monsters try to lie and say that the baby was still alive, there'd be no proof to that. The evidence would be what the medical examiner would have declared. And plus, even if they did the opposite and try to say the baby was still alive, could just be a stall tactic. So you have to lean on the evidence, and the evidence, I believe, would come from the medical professionals. Again, once we know more about the autopsy and one, how Rebecca was killed, because remember, she was stabbed. Could she have been stabbed in the stomach, in the chest? And if she was fighting, I mean, how accurate could those stabs be? So I'm sure that the autopsy is showcasing some injuries that could have put the baby's life at risk. And then obviously the cesarean section itself. So a lot of people believe that Rebecca's baby died the night she did. The tragedy now is not determining whether the baby lived. Investigators already know the answer. The tragedy is that they still need to find this baby so the family can lay this child to rest. So what comes next? Till the baby's recovered, the case remains incomplete. The family cannot fully grieve. Investigators continue searching, and the community continues hoping for closure. And they'll not stop, not until Rebecca's baby is found. So again, I wish I could give you more, but there really is no details on the specific cause of her death. We just know that she was stabbed multiple times, and the baby, no other way of putting this, baby was cut out of her. So I'm assuming in general that those injuries were so severe that they know for a fact that the baby didn't survive that. Again, I think they knew right from the beginning, but they were tentative. And the prosecutor may have talked directly with the medical examiner, people that did the autopsy, and they kind of know they made the decision based on the science. So technically, whatever they say wouldn't even matter at this point. Doesn't mean they don't stop looking, but I think there's enough evidence that they were able to determine that the baby is no longer with us. And I think that will come out soon once they release everything. So I hope that answers some questions. I mean, I don't have the specific injuries. I don't have a copy of the autopsy, but this maybe gives us a level of understanding on where the weight of the decision is coming from, if that makes sense. Guys, don't forget, if you like the content, buy me a cup of coffee in the description. Also on top of the YouTube channel. As always, guys, stay safe. More videos to come.